Because of BioWare's expertise in crafting rich tales and memorable characters, Dragon Age has long been a hallmark of the RPG scene. Dragon Age Origins, with its dark heroic fantasy backdrop and emphasis on player choice, had won many hearts. In 2011, Dragon Age 2 was released, taking the franchise 2 leaps ahead and 1 step back. Despite some criticism, the sequel improved the main combat system and other elements, setting the basis for Dragon Age Inquisition, the multi-regional success that debuted in 2014. However, Inquisition was launched more than a half-decade ago, leaving fans eager for the next chapter. And the fact that you're watching this video suggests that you already like the franchise, so subscribe to my channel to learn more about BioWare in general. So here are 5 reasons why we're concerned about the next Dragon Age. Track record. Despite receiving largely excellent reviews from critics, Dragon Age 2 was met with considerable criticism from gamers when it was launched back in 2011. With Inquisition in 2014, the studio reclaimed part of the Lost Origins audience, despite a near-catastrophic development cycle with Frostbite that nearly destroyed the crew. Mass Effect Andromeda, the most current game from the famous Mass Effect franchise, rocked fans' trust when it was launched in March 2017 following a 5-year development period. In reaction, BioWare paused the franchise and reduced the size of its Montreal unit, and then it later merged with EA's Motive Studios in August of 2017. A rapid reaction to the release of Andromeda, demonstrating EA's BioWare studios were now under scrutiny. And then there's Anthem, a game that took nearly 7 years to produce. Despite being delayed from the end of 2018 to March of 2019, Anthem debuted with a slew of flaws, bugs, and disappointing critics with players alike. Despite the studio's efforts to preserve the project, making Anthem 2, it actually was seen as an outcast in the gaming world, with Anthem 2 being cancelled. To say that the company has had a few difficult years would be an understatement. Their current studio production has failed to live up to their previously illustrious reputation. The studio employees are clearly giving their all in all the projects, but mismanagement has a negative impact on the end results. Putting so much thought and work into something that eventually fails is really heartbreaking. But hopefully, the BioWare team is keeping their heads up for the next Dragon Age. Fans want them to triumph and reclaim their previous greatness, but their morale must be at an all-time low right now. Lack of updates. Let's be honest, information about Dragon Age has been pretty sporadic. The trailers and information about the game have been more transparent than, say, Elder Scrolls 6, but the absence of updates since the previous trailers have left many fans concerned and anxious to hear if things are really going well for the game and the company. While it's difficult to tell when the game's marketing will begin, there is certainly some excitement to see detailed gameplay and more dramatic trailers like what we saw at the 2020 Game Awards. However, the year of 2021 seems to be BioWare's quietest since any time. Of course, many fans are skeptical of BioWare's content updates, such as short stories in the place of Thetis they posted back in 2021. However, the following game has very modest and niche updates that you should check on the developer's Twitter for. So what I am referring to is a serious update, one that includes trailers, gameplay, character and protagonist insights into what scenario we are in the game, among other things. As many Dragon Age fans have been waiting since 2017 for any update to the upcoming Dragon Age games, getting drip-fed teases and little things is great, but it's not really required. It becomes quite tiresome for us and leads us to believe that this game is not as close to completion as one would want to believe. The technique of constantly showing us snippets has really worn dry now, and we're hoping for something huge to be released in the upcoming Dragon Age game. Of course, this is likely because BioWare does not want to overpromise things for this upcoming game, but it does raise the question of whether the game will be worth it when it is released. Project was cancelled before. Dragon Age Dreadwolf has a long and tumultuous history for a game that was only debuted in a brief trailer at the 2018 Game Awards. However, given that Dragon Age Inquisition was published back in 2014, many were perplexed as to why so little was displayed. According to Kotaku's The Past and Present of Dragon Age 4 by Jason Schreier, production on Dragon Age 4 began back in 2015, following the critically praised Trespasser DLC from Dragon Age Inquisition. While some of the Inquisition crew went on to Mass Effect Andromeda, Mike Laidlaw, Mark Dura, and a few other dozen developers began working on the next installment in the series under the code name Joplin. Project Joplin had a defined goal, tools, and a production pipeline in place, which motivated everyone who was engaged. Although the game was supposed to be smaller in scale, Joplin would have more variety and complexity as you played as a gang of spies in the Tevinter Imperium, utilizing heists, presumably to get around Solus's intentions. One former BioWare developer who worked on the project even stated, "We were working towards something very cool, a hugely reactive game, smaller in scope than Dragon Age Inquisition, but much larger in player choice, followers, reactivity, and in depth. I'm sad that that game will never get made." And the cancellation was mostly caused by the lack of production rate for the game Anthem. However, the project was formally restarted by the studio somewhere between the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018 under the code name Morrison, and it's uncertain what, if any, features will be carried over from Joplin to the current edition. EA's opinion of RPGs. Dragon Age Inquisition received over 150 awards, including the Game of the Year in 2014, and it had the most successful launch in modern BioWare history. Despite this, publisher Electronic Arts does not appear to be interested in rushing out a sequel or RPG game in general. Not to mention, Dragon Age Dreadwolf was first confirmed to be a live-action game, demonstrating EA's dislike for single-player games once again, and contributing to their desire for longevity and monetization within the Dragon Age setting. I mean, let's be honest, what exactly would a Dragon Age with live and online capabilities even look like? While these aspects have the potential to propel the Dragon Age franchise to new heights, many fans are anxious because of EA's renowned usage of microtransactions. Concerns have also been raised about utilizing Anthem, a game with its own tragic past, as the foundation for the next chapter in one of the BioWare's most beloved series. According to an interview with Mark Dara, former executive producer for Dragon Age Dreadwolf, single-player games are highly expensive when compared to other genres of games, which is why EA does not respect and encourage that sort of game base in their community. And as far as we know, single-player games are popular within the gaming community, despite the fact that they don't have a lengthy lifespan for monetization. A statement from CFO Chris Suh said, "If we think about the model impact and financial impact of it, I think the first thing to always keep in mind is that live services still encompass on a trailing 12-month basis over 70% of our business, and that has been a proven, very reliable, highly reoccurring revenue stream, and that will still be the predominant driver of our P&L, profit and loss, long term." So live service is what generates income for their corporation, leaving single-player games at an all-time low to fund and keep up for the future of gaming in EA. I'm curious when EA will finally realize that live service has been seen as gimmicky and greedy within the gaming business. Single-player games have long been appreciated and revered. And of course, there are several examples for single-player games EA can look from, leaving BioWare as a disregarded and undervalued studio for EA. BioWare's Shift and Frostbite. All EA-branded titles have recently moved to DICE's Frostbite engine. Few exceptions, such as Respawn's Entertainment Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but most developers have used Frostbite. The powerful engine was used in both of BioWare's most recent games, Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem. The technologies were created for the first-person shooters rather than an open-world RPG. Of course, the Frostbite engine was exceedingly tough to create an RPG fantasy setting like Dragon Age, and while Inquisition appears to have done well with it, there were a lot of adjustments to concept artwork as well as the extension of negating hairstyles for certain characters. The Frostbite technology is clearly ahead of its time, but it's just not suitable for creating RPG games at all. For fans, the engine has served as a scapegoat for recent issues in the EA franchises ranging from Need to Speed to FIFA to the Star Wars titles. The notion is that Electronic Arts forces all of its studios to utilize Frostbite, and it makes it quite cheaper for them, which is supported by the fact that practically every EA product has been switched to this engine. For BioWare, it was their decision. Former BioWare general manager Aaron Flynn said, "We have been wrapping up Mass Effect 3, and we just shipped Dragon Age 2, and we knew that our Eclipse engine that we shipped Dragon Age 2 on wasn't going to cut it for the future iterations of Dragon Age. It couldn't do open world, the renderer wasn't strong enough, and those were the two big ones." BioWare had to design a communication system within Frostbite as well as an animation systems for dogs and to horses for Dragon Age Inquisition, and Frostbite could only animate bipedal creatures. Cameron Lee, a BioWare producer on the use of Frostbite, commented, "We started with a really solid foundation of the engine, but we had to build a lot around it. Concept of save games didn't exist, at least as BioWare knows them. The tactical camera, just being able to pause a game and still work within it, Frostbite didn't have that. We had to add all of these things to it over the course of our development over the last 4 years. We built all of these different tools for the engine. Frostbite takes a long time to include fundamental RPG elements, and BioWare was working hard to create one of the most ambitious games the company had ever created, partly inspired by Bethesda's Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And now they finally announced that they'll be utilizing the same Anthem codebase for Dragon Age Dreadwolf, demonstrating that the engine is a difficult tool to utilize, causing us to wait longer than intended. In any case, BioWare understands the stake for them and their reputation, that they must be aware of the amount of pressure on them to create a good Dragon Age game, as really something extraordinary. If it fails or something goes wrong, the company is at a larger risk. And other companies have recovered from even more serious errors throughout their years, but it all depends on what BioWare presents for Dragon Age Dreadwolf, with a hint that it would be later this year in 2022. But with that, we are going to wrap up 5 reasons why we are concerned about the next Dragon Age. Which on this list are you most concerned about? Leave that comment down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.